Welcome back, my dear students. Students, in our previous classes, we have learned about the most important sources of history, like manuscripts, pots, stones, weapons, utensils, buildings. So, today in this chapter, we will be learning about the words that tell us histories, that tell us the history of Indian textiles. Children, now we will discuss about the clothes or names of the Indian textiles with which they were famous in European markets or Western markets. We'll discuss about how they got the names and how they became popular in Western markets. Let's begin with muslin. Now, children, how Britishers came to know about this cloth? It was through the Arab traders who carried the cloth from India to Mosul, city in present day Iraq. They called it muslin. Children, you must have heard the name from your parents, grandparents, like malmal in Hindi. So, malmal in English is muslin. Muslin is a very lightweight, fine quality cotton cloth in a plain weave. It can be used for various purposes like dressmaking, furniture polishing. It is a very healthy organic fabric which can be used for several purposes. Now there were other clothes also which were famous in European markets like calico. Now again there is a story behind it. Like how this cloth got a name calico. Like when Portuguese first came to India, we know they came to India through Indian Ocean in search of spices like cardamom, pepper. So they landed in Calicut on the Kerala coast. Now the cotton textiles which they took back to Europe along with the spices came to be called calico. Now children, usually the names were associated with the clothes on the basis of the places from where they were getting the clothes. Like now, this calico name is derived from Calicut because they got the cloth from Calicut. So subsequently, calico became the general name for all the cotton textiles. Now in 1730, East India Company sent its representatives in Calcutta, and they placed an order that year was for 5,89,000 pieces of cloth, and it was having a list of 98 varieties of cotton and silk cloths. They were known by their common name in the European trade as piece goods. Usually woven cloth pieces that were 20 yards long and 1 yard wide. We know 1 yard is equal to 3 feet 36 inches. So that long pieces they were getting. Now children, there are other names in foreign languages which relate to Indian words because that type of fabric was produced in India. So some other words like chintz and bandana derive from the Hindi word chint and bandana. Now chint is a type of cloth which has floral designs and it was very famous in England. So from the year 1680 there started a craze for printed Indian cotton textiles in England and Europe, mainly for their floral designs, for their texture, and they were relatively cheap. Even rich people of England, including the Queen, were wearing the clothes of Indian fabric. Now, another type of cloth that was produced in India was bandana. Now, the students who are from Rajasthan, they must have seen this type of cloth in their houses. It is also known as bandhani, which is used in foreign countries with the name bandana, which is also used as a scarf. Now, why we call this as bandana or bandhani? Because when this cloth is designed or colored, they first tie this cloth and then they color this cloth. So we can say that it is basically follows the process of tying and dyeing. That's why it was called bandhana. Now children, see this design of cloth. It is chintz. As I've already discussed with you in my previous slide, that this cloth was very famous in England and Europe, mainly for their floral designs, for their texture, and they were relatively cheap. It was produced in Masulipatnam, Andhra Pradesh in the mid 19th century in India. Now see this design, bandhana design. I have already discussed with you that how this cloth got its name and how it was produced in India. So this bandhana refers to brightly colored and printed scarf for the neck or head, and it derived from the word bandhana in Hindi, which referred to variety of brightly colored cloth produced through a method of tying and dyeing. Children, as we have already discussed, that the clothes or Indian textiles which were famous in the foreign countries, they were noted by their place of origin. They have got their names with their place of availability, like Kasim Bazaar, Patna, Calcutta, Orissa, Charpure. So with these names we can understand like how popular Indian textiles had become in different parts of the world. Now if you can see this picture, this is Jambani Weave. Now it was originally known as Dhakai, named after the city of Dhaka, one of the many ancient textile weaving centers in Bengal region. Now, Jamdani weave is a fine muslin on which decorative motifs are woven on the loom, typically in grey and white. Now, what we understand with the term motifs, a very decorative image or design, especially a repeated one forming a pattern, like we can see from here. Children, in 18th century, Indian textiles were very famous in European markets. Like we have learned about the cloth chintz. It was very popular in European markets. Even Queen was preferring to wear it. So Indian textiles were very popular and have great demand in European markets. And because of huge demand, the wool and silk makers of Britain, they started protesting against Indian textiles. They were pressurizing the government to ban the import of Indian textiles in 1720. Britain cotton makers were worried because Indian textiles were in great demand, and as because Britain producers were in budding stage. Now budding stage means their business was in growing stage. At this stage they were not able to compete with Indian textiles. And because Indian textiles were in great demand in European markets, they were suffering huge losses. So Britain wool makers, they forced the government to ban import of Indian textiles. So the British government enacted a legislation banning the use of printed cotton textiles in Britain. The act was known as Calico Act. Now, to safeguard European producers, calico printing industry grew under the government protection. Now, from the name, also we can see that they have kept the name of the industry as Calico, because so that they can increase the demand of British clothes. As I said, they were copying the Indian designs also. They were copying the Indian prints on white muslin or plain unbleached Indian cloth. So they kept this name Calico Industry to increase the demand of British goods, so that they can protect the or safeguard the British producers. Now, as because there was a tough competition, they were facing the tough competition from Indian textiles because they were in great demand in European markets. So they decided to improve the technology. To face this tough competition. So they decided to invent new machines. So they searched for technological innovation in England. And in 1764, the spinning jenny was invented by John Kay. Now, what was that spinning jenny? Spinning jenny, a machine by which a single worker could operate several spindles onto which thread was spun. When the wheel was turned, all the spindles rotated. Now, children, see, if a person will be making the cloth, obviously manually, he will be able to make only one cloth. But if a machine will make the cloth, obviously, machine through the machine, a man can make more than one cloth in a day. Now they have invented this spinning jenny to increase the productivity of the cloths, productivity of the traditional spindles. Now another machine which they have invented was a steam engine by Richard Arkwright. Children, as we have already discussed about that Britishers invented new technology new machines like spinning jenny and steam engine to safeguard the British producers and to increase the productivity of their goods. And because of adoption of new machines, it reduced the employment of laborers. And now less laborers can produce more clothes at cheaper rates. But children, still, Indian textiles continue to dominate whole world trade till the end of 18th century. European trading companies like Dutch, the French and English made huge profits out of this flourishing trade. Now these companies were purchasing cotton and silk from India by importing silver. But as we have learned in chapter number 2 from trade to territory, like when Britishers got Diwani rights and when East India Company gained political power in Bengal. So they stopped bringing gold and silver or precious metal from their countries to buy raw materials from India. Now they started using the revenue of Bengal to buy the raw materials like cotton, silk, and to meet the expenses of their company, East India Company, they started collecting revenue from the peasants and zamindars in India. And they were using this revenue to buy Indian textiles. Children, now we will quickly revise whatever we have learned in this session. Children, we have learned about the cloth chintz, which derived from the Hindi word chint. Now, chintz was a cloth with a small and colorful flowery designs. Now, as we have already discussed that from 1680s, there was a craze for printed Indian cotton textiles in England and Europe, mainly for their exquisite floral designs and texture and relative cheapness. So even rich people of England, including Queen herself, wore clothes of Indian fabric. We have also learned about the cloth bandana, which derived from the Hindi word bandhana. Now it refers to any brightly colored and printed scarf for the neck or head. I have also told you that there were other clothes in the order book that were noted by their place of origin, like Kasim Bajar, Patna, Calcutta, Orissa, Charpure. The widespread use of these words shows how popular Indian textiles had become in different parts of the world. And we have discussed about spinning jenny also. Like spinning jenny was a machine by which a single worker could operate several spindles onto which thread was spun. Thank you, children. Have a nice day. Stay home, stay safe.